want Rivka to start a conversation, just kind of some of the things that she's done to try to work through folks who are paid assassins. And then I want to open it up to all of you. All of you work in different buildings, you've seen different things happen where people are unable to work through situations. Maybe you guys have had a situation where you worked with someone who was a paid assassin and yet you were able to turn them around. And if you have that, you are a miracle worker, and we'd like to hear how you did it.
And we want to hire you, and I don't care what Rob says.
All right, Rivka.
Okay, so I think I need to preface it with, remember yesterday when I said, don't make the mistakes that I've made? We talked about Renee Gallagher and that clip. I think one of the things that gets in my way of being successful, and as I looked at it, I don't think I'm like a paid assassin in terms of my personality, but I can be a little cynical and a little impatient, and sometimes I'm owning it for myself right now. Okay, remember I also said, I see me, I see you, you see you. So part of the struggle that I have with this particular personality type is that I see some of myself in those people. I've been in situations where I've become cynical or jaded or angry or not passive aggressive. That's a style that doesn't work for me. But a struggle that I have, and it really is a struggle, is being too direct sometimes. And I'm going to give you an example. Felton, picture of the ducks just reminded me, and I was telling Robbie during the break. We had a paid assassin at Sacramento Public Library. And when I got there, there were a number of organizational changes that had to occur because of all the stuff that I mentioned yesterday about people going to prison and governments and those kinds of things. And so it's an extreme example. But I also, as I was getting to know all the locations, discovered that there was a senior manager who was a paid assassin. And that senior manager was preventing the people out in the locations from doing their work very effectively. And I'm actually kind of embarrassed to say that I sat down with the person and I used the term, you bonded with the wrong mother duck. And if you're going, I mean, it was one of those very direct conversations. I want you to be successful, but the behavior that you're exhibiting, when you send somebody a snarky email and say you're not allowed to use Comic Sans as your email font, I don't like Comic Sans either, Jane, but that's really not the direction that we want to go as an organization. This is a struggle for me, partly because I see a little bit of myself in this, and partly because I'm also kind of mother bearish, and when I see somebody behaving like this towards staff who are not in positions of equality, it's one thing for Felton and I to have this kind of conversation, or, you know, to go at it, right? Yeah. But it's another thing for me to do it with a branch supervisor or a children's librarian or somebody else. And that's the thing. I have to say, I can feel my light sort of mechanism at work here as I think about dealing with those particular kinds of people, because it's very difficult for me. I'm either, like, I get mad, and that's not helpful, and I don't think I'm just laying it all out here. I don't think I'm as effective as I need to be in dealing with these people, frankly.
So but I think, and obviously, you've been tremendously effective in moving your library forward, your library system forward. Yeah. I think one of the things you see, and that's exactly it. When you have those assassins in your organization, the only way to work through them is to work beyond them. Mm-hmm. And you have, while you have how many of your employees, you have so many employees who are going to be supportive of moving forward with you. If you get them moving all in the same place, and start drawing people away from the paid assassin, eventually things start to happen. And as things start to happen, their power becomes less, and they keep fighting to hold on to that power, but eventually someone starts to see their success. I have a better chance of success here. You know, it's really interesting. I mean, you know, some folks just move toward the negative. But when folks start to see that positive things are happening, they kind of move toward that, you know, if they feel they can be a part of it. And eventually, those folks are left on an island with a group of folks, but it's a small group. So as things start to be effective, and they see you on Library Journal or something like that, they get all mad. That really wasn't what it was, da-da-da, da-da-da. But the community sees you in a very different light.
Right.
And eventually they can't do anything but deal with that.
And when it comes down to it, what matters is what the community thinks of what's happening at the library, not what I'm thinking of Amy about some of the things that you said and some of the things we were talking about at dinner last night. What matters is the impact that we're having on the community. And I know from my perspective, I don't have a lot of patience. I am, that is definitely not a strength of mine, being patient. But I also know that it takes time to identify, to really be clear, is this person a paid assassin, or is this person just, what's the term, cynic, is a disappointed optimist?
Like a person who's been burned by the system, if you can
Right.
recognize they've been burned, perhaps you can
How do we
fix
bring
that.
them along? And I'm thinking, and sorry, I don't mean to digress here, Mr. Felton, but I'm thinking about something that you said early on about buying into other people's success. You know, I mean, it's a very small pool that we swim in. We all apply for the same jobs and all this, and I'm thinking about somebody who was, who I worked with in a different organization, and she wanted to go through a leadership program, that was a national leadership program. And she was told, well, you don't have any leadership skills. This is a person who's now working in the private sector, who's tremendously successful as an information architect. And it breaks my heart because we need people that are as smart as she is, as creative as she is, as problem-solving oriented as she is. And for her to have been told, you're not a leader, I mean, it still hurts. This is years ago. I mean, this is like 10 years ago. And she still sometimes, when we're talking, brings up that pain that she feels about that. And that's, I think, in a weird way, it's the other side of, it's almost like how some of these people maybe became paid assassins. And we have to own some of that responsibility. And I think, what could I have done? What could I have done to make it, you know, have smoothed the path for her? So this is a tough one. I feel kind of emotional about this because I want everybody in the organization. I mean, I think you figured that out from my piece yesterday. We all have a role to play, and I really do believe that leadership comes from everywhere within the organization. So when I see somebody who exhibits these behaviors, that tells me, you know, that I've got to own whatever my piece of it is, even if I inherited it, and be direct with the person and say, this is how you come on. You may not mean to, but you know, this is what I've seen, and how can we work through this together so that you can be successful and the organization too.
Did you have a question for Rick?
Well, you know, I was thinking about what you said, and you know, one of the problems with paid assassins is they create more paid assassins, right? So you really do have to take direct action when you can identify that as much as you can. And there are always factors that really kind of tie in sometimes. But I mean, when you said that you felt bad about that conversation, maybe you can feel bad about some of the phrases you chose. But
oh yes, I frequently do that. Wait, here, let me get my foot up. See, get in my mouth, yes.
But you were doing them the courtesy of, instead of, because another way to deal with paid assassins is to isolate them, right? To cut them off from influence, to closet them, to do that kind of thing so that they can't spread their poison, right? you were doing them the courtesy of saying, here's your behavior. I don't know if you saw it, but here's your behavior, here's the action, and now you need to change it. So instead of feeling bad about that, I would say you were giving them that opportunity, and if they choose to take it, that was on them. And it goes back to what Felton said about taking personal responsibility. I mean, you could have isolated them. You could have tried to start the process of ushering them out the door. But you saw the potential for them to change, or at least gave them the benefit of the doubt that they could. And after that, it's on them.
I love the fact that you told me Devon went the wrong mother. I mean, what a great way to be direct about it, though, by using it. It's just like, hey, I want to let you know that you kind of went the wrong way.
Yeah.
So here's another way.
Yeah. And you know, as it happens, the person actually did leave the organization and moved elsewhere. But you know, didn't somebody use this yesterday in the meeting? Insanity is, did somebody use it? That was you. Okay, so, you know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. Well, if you don't learn from that, if indeed you exhibit these behaviors and that's who you become in your organization, and then you take it to another organization, all you're doing is taking your toxicity with you. Right? And because of the way HR, you know, sort of policies and law are these days, I can't really be all that honest.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody calls and wants a reference for this person, I can say, well, you know, the organization will never be the same without it.
Well, actually, I was just thinking, I have 2 times where I've been able to implement that. We'll talk about that.
Well, I was just going to say, it's kind of like a vicious cycle. Like, let's say you had that paid assassin and they leave, well, they foster other paid assassins. You know, you talk to them, you know, they could be better for a little bit, but they go back to their old ways, and then they create other paid assassins. So you're never going to really get rid of paid assassins. Like, they're always going to exist.
They will always exist. Every once in a while, though, you will go through a period of time at the branch level. You'll never have it in a large system. There's just too many people. But every time you'll get to a point where your branch will be like perfect. All the staff working perfectly together, everybody's on board, everybody's working in harmony, and everything is working perfectly. And then you hire that raw person and it all goes crap. but we do have those periods where in a group of 10 to 20 people or a smaller group, you can have everybody working together and everybody on board. So I wanted to say on times where I've seen it actually work and be able to bring someone back from that level. It can work when you weren't that person's original supervisor. You come in and you interview that, you start coming in and that person, and you have that conversation with them. I had a woman who came in, she was retiring, been with the system 35 years. She was doing an exit interview. I wanted to kind of hear from all of our folks. Brought her in and said, you know, thank you for your time with us. You know, I just wanted to hear from you about the history and so I can understand more about this organization. And she brought up something that had happened 32 years ago and started crying. And she had held that in and held that against the organization for 33 years. And the worst thing is, an incident that happens from one individual is held against the organization. And she had held that against the organization and continued to work for us, but it held that back and held that against the organization.
So what she needed was like what Tony Robbins talks about, this slave, or like, it's like interrupt. She needed an interrupt. Somebody come along, or like Caesar does with the dog. They're so focused and they're still fighting on that incident 33 years ago. They need somebody to come along and say, oh.
Yeah, which I was able to do it 33 years ago,
Sure.
and after she was retired. So what I took from that was when I had a chance to see someone who was going through that, and maybe this had just happened, because many of these folks were very good workers, and all of a sudden you just see them starting to trail off, and they're starting to go through the issues and start happening. And I went and I asked this person who was very quiet and had a conversation, and I found out what had led her down that route. And she was just happy that someone was willing to talk to her about it, and she was able to turn that around. So I've seen that actually not that person's supervisor, or the person that is around that person, you're able to come in and kind of start that solution. But other than that, it's very, very difficult. Anybody have any solutions or times when they've been able to do it themselves?
Occasionally, we've been able, we have a particular person I'm thinking of who works in our organization, and she's one of those, and again, very intelligent, that if she doesn't agree with the change that's been implemented, she pretends not to understand and asks the same question again and again and again. I'm like, but why? I don't understand. But the way we did it before was really good. And even though we know that she understands perfectly what we're telling her, but, and she's not intelligent, but she's combative in that way. But with 2 different projects, we've kind of helped her get by making her in charge of the project. And say, okay, this is the change we're implementing. We're going to figure out a timeline. This is our timeline. You're going to figure out who's going to be responsible for what, which volunteers you're going to tap to help us do this. And this is now your baby. And
that was it like it beforehand, or did she express that she doesn't like it?
she expressed that she didn't like it beforehand. We need somebody to manage this project. Everybody else has projects right now, so you guys want to do it. And it wasn't, she was sick and ill for a couple of days. But then I said, okay, talk to again, we gotta get going on it. And she was actually able to kind of get on board. I said, these are the talking points, this is the script that you use as a patron, this is the script that you use as a staff to explain why we're enacting this particular change. And I said, I want you to come up with some other thoughts, other things in your own words to kind of say. And once she understood that, we kind of went on to her. She didn't totally embrace the change, but her behavior aligned with what we needed. I don't know that her attitude or her emotional,
That's huge.
but we brought her, we were able to bring the behavior in line with what we need. How she felt about it on the inside.
I feel like we're in an encounter group right now. and I'm thinking about a situation that we have going on in our system right now. And I think I alluded to where we talked about it a little bit yesterday with a particular level of management where we have 2 people who oversee our branches and have very different styles. And they're not very outcomes oriented. So their reports say, I attended a meeting at, the blah blah school district. I attended a meeting at blah blah blah. I interviewed LSAs this week. But there's no real, here was a problem I encountered, here's what I did about it, here's how I communicated it, that kind of that kind of behavior, which is what we're really trying to move toward in our organization. And I on the outside now looking in, as we have a new person in charge of public services at Public Library. She's very customer focused, very staff focused. So she's been meeting with these folks and saying, okay, we're moving this branch manager from here over to here, and so there's going to be a vacancy here. The best thing you can do is be on the ground in this branch for the next 2 weeks. That way then you know what the issues are, you can identify opportunities for us as we bring a new person in, you can really meet with the staff, you can do all of that. Okay, she says. And then guess what happens? About a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, we get an email from one of the people in the branch saying, I've been doing all the work. I think I need to be paid out of class. Right? And so I'm going, I don't understand because I'm not directly involved with this, but why would we pay this person out of class when this person is supposed to be on the ground in the branch? Oh, well, I didn't understand that that's what you wanted me to do. I didn't know that that's what you didn't mean that I have to go work with the public. really? You wanted me to go work with the public? So we ended up having a conversation, and it was a great learning opportunity for a brand new manager in our organization who had the opportunity then. I said, okay, this is one of those times, I hate to be the mom, but what we have to end up doing with somebody with that kind of behavior is saying, okay, we just had this conversation. You're going to go work at this branch for 2 weeks, and you're going to talk to the staff. When you get back to your office, I want you to send me an email describing what we just talked about and what your goals are for the next 2 weeks when you're in that branch. Because if we don't do that, there will constantly be misunderstandings. There will constantly be, well, I didn't know you meant that. I thought you meant this. And yet, and I've got this new senior manager going, I've never worked with people like this. I'm confused. And yet it's sort of a cultural, I mean, this is to me the real issue around paid assassins. It becomes a cultural thing, and you end up with kind of two cultures, obviously. I mean, that's a blinding statement of the obvious. But I think that that's the real challenge for us, that we're dealing with these people who have been allowed to behave like this over and over again, and nobody's called them on. Thank you for saying that thing about the wrong underdog, because I feel wrong.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're okay.
That just reminds me of a strategy that I think they use. I don't micromanage. I don't have time for it. It's not my natural way. And sometimes when you have to get involved on that level, it feels like they pull the chair out from under you because you're in this position where you are micromanaging. And I think they rely on that. It's that intelligent thing. Well, I'm going to get them off their game. So they're so obsessed about monitoring me and getting away with murder. And for me, doing it, acknowledging it, repeating it, not being afraid of micromanaging for a certain amount of time seems to help. But, you know, they do backfire.
I think that is a really excellent point. And sometimes, you know, I think about all the things that prevent us from being successful, and I think that that's one of them. And also, you know, depending on your job, you're busy. You know, how much time do you really have to devote to somebody like that?
I just want to talk about a situation that I went through in the last few years. I have a staff member that came from what I would say one of those horrible situations. And that staff member, once we developed that trust relationship and worked very well together, that person opened up to me about the situation that could have made that person very bitter going forward. I could tell every time I turned around, they wanted to talk about it. And what I learned from going through that situation, because I felt like that I had a responsibility once that person opened up to me about what they had been through, that I saw an opportunity to help turn it around and speak in very positive ways about that person's future and not allow the person so much to reflect on that awful situation they went through. But, and I can't say that. I think if I sat down even today with that person and the situation, sort of the conversation came back up, as much as I tried and devoted a lot of time to trying to divert the negativity and help that person through those awful memories, I'm sure even today, if I sat down and had a conversation with that person, that it would still come up and it would still be a negative memory for that person. But what I learned from it was looking back on my life entirely, my friends, my work relationship, any relationship you have in your life, I think you have a responsibility that when you sit down with somebody who's either going through, especially at work, going through an awful situation, or they're in a situation where it has the potential to really make a horrible negative impact on their life, you have a responsibility, whether you're their friend, their boss, their neighbor, to not nurture the negativity, you're helping that person get through and work through through that situation, but there's so many people who sit down and you talk about the people that they gather around them and they're making other toxic people in the workplace. They're doing it, those other people, they don't take accountability or responsibility for joining in on the negativity, and they nurture it in this person instead of pulling them away and helping them to see their future away from the negative situation. And I think if we, the culture of our workplace understood that we should nurture helping somebody to get through a situation instead of, I know when somebody's hurt by something, they want to talk about how much it's impacted their life in a negative way. But if the situation is truly over and, you definitely want to help them. Sit down and...
Yeah, people have to move on.
Yeah.
In many cases, people are confusing. One more comment and then I need to move on myself. Thank you, Chris.
I did want to tell a quick story, and I'll leave out a lot of details when we get to the point, because I was very reminded of a scenario where she said that she had gone to a coworker that she felt was a paid assassin, and the person's like, well, why? Or, and just constantly get the question. I used to work for a gentleman named Ed Roman, who was a very angry man. That's the only way to put it. He was a very angry boss, ran a company, made millions of dollars, but he was just always angry. And when I started working with the company, I'm like, we got a problem, we got to take care of this issue. I said, I'm going to go to him and tell him what we need to do. And everybody, all my coworkers was like, you don't go to Ed Roman and tell him what you're going to do. You just do it. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a terrible plan. So, in my ignorance, I walk into the office to go tell him, and literally, he's a very animated, what do you mean we're going to do that? And I got yelled at for 20 minutes straight. And, he's like, I don't understand. What do you mean you're going to do this? And I just said, and I think this is a great answer to that type of response is, well, what do you mean? What are you going to do? And I said, well, let me show you. I'll take care of it. I'll do all the responsibility, and if it fails, it's on me. But let me show you. He said, fine, go show me. I did it. And of course, it was thankfully a success. But the thing was, it changed the environment at work too, because after that, my coworkers were like, well, maybe I'm going to go tell them. And instead of them just doing their own thing. And what happened was Ed Roman was actually part of his anger stemmed from the fact that people just were kind of going and doing their own thing. And it wasn't that he was against people being creative and doing something and taking responsibility. It's just that sometimes he wanted to be included because he felt like he was responsible for everything that happened. And if something went wrong, it looked bad on him because it was his name and his company. But in the end, let me show you.
Good point. We're going to move on. I think, this is hopefully something. So we wanted to center the first part of the discussion around creating an environment to be a catalyst and how it's effective with your leadership. So we talked about the fact that, there are folks who are emergent leaders in your organization that you can help foster. There are folks who are, paid assassins that you have to kind of maneuver yourself around. But ultimately, we want to talk about two more things. I think I'm only going to get a chance to go to one, but let's talk a little bit about how we are catalysts in our communities. And I want to spend the next, I guess I have 45 minutes, 30 minutes, somewhere around in there.
You can take an hour if you like.
Oh, look. All right, let's work around thinking about what are the type of things that you want to do in your community that you believe you can be a catalyst for that you don't have to do. So let me give you an example, using Cleveland as an example here. There's my city. Always somebody. At least you can say it though. Lisa's been there in the winter. Lisa's visited me in the winter, and it is a very different looking city in the winter. But Cleveland is, people hear a lot of things about Cleveland. Cleveland has been a wonderful experience for me. It's a great place to have a lot of culture. But Cleveland has a lot of issues. Cleveland at one point in time was the 6th largest city in the United States. With over 1 million people in it. And literally, it has gone down to now where it's the 44th largest city with less than 400,000 people in it. And over that period of time, a lot of things have happened. While there is a renaissance, you can come to the city and you would be just like, this city is great. As Daphne found out when she was here with the Cleveland recently, this city is wonderful. But still, there are a lot of issues around poverty. Probably the second city with the most, second large city with the most poverty in it, has a lot of issues around violence, one of the most violent cities in the country. And it has a lot of issues that need to be worked through, especially around issues of poverty. Here's my library. The main library here is, I just wanted to show you guys. There's no other reason to have it. So in Cleveland, we have 27 branches, and this main building, which is 520,000 square feet. So that's where we work out of. When I first got there in 2009, I walked in and Cleveland, Ohio is a very well-funded library system. Ohio libraries are very well-funded, and Cleveland was a very well-funded library system. So when I got there, we had a budget of $72 million. To walk in my first day, we have a board meeting, and the board pulled me aside and said, the economy's not doing so well, there's some issues and things of that nature. We are going to be putting forward a change of the appropriation for the budget. It will be $72 million now. It will be $63 million now. And within 6 months, that was down to $52 million. But that it just paralleled what was happening in the city. There were foreclosures everywhere. I mean, those of you who live, you've seen that all across the country and where you live. There have been a lot of issues. So I had heard Jerry Meek, who was the Calgary library director, and he had talked about the idea that libraries should be community deficit libraries. So I went to, and this was part of getting the staff there to all find a way to kind of think about themselves in a way where, being this, barrage of things. At that point in time, the Cleveland Public Library system had 1,000 employees. There was no way we were going to be able to move forward with 1,000 employees, but I refused to move forward with layoffs. So through attrition, we had moved down to 700 staff members. But so you can imagine what morale was like. It was a very tough place to come in and work every day. And so the idea was, what do we want our staff to think about? We want them to think about what they're doing in the community, not what's happening internally in the library. So we started talking about ourselves as community deficit fighters. And so we started talking about what we were going to do in the community to be the community deficit fighters that we can be. And so we started looking at what was happening. This is something from the Greater Cleveland Food Bank, and it may be hard to see, but I can talk to you a little bit about it. Across the country, the meal gap is 3 billion meals across the United States. In Cleveland, the meal gap was 58 million meals in the city of Cleveland. As how many young people, seniors, and folks were not going to have some meal because of food insecurity. And so we saw it in our libraries. We had young people coming in who were hungry. And we were like, how can we be a part of this? Part of the solution. So we started working with our agencies around that. This is another look at where food insecurity is now. As you can see, there's 2000 where there was very low food security, and you can see food insecurity, which is low, and very low food insecurity, which is the top line. That line in 2007 spiked, and it's stayed the same all along the way. So even though there has been a little bit of a bounce back in the recession, food insecurity across the nation has remained tremendously high. So we partnered with the food bank on first starting with summer lunches. You know, young people would generally get their, best meal of the day at school in many of our neighborhoods. And so they weren't getting, during the summer, coming into our library because they didn't have any food. So we partnered with our hunger agencies to bring in lunches for our young people during the summer. And this was really hard. Our staff really did not like this. We had a staff member who was the head of the union who said, "We're librarians, we're not lunch ladies." That was her quote. And they basically fought against it until they started to see the difference that we were making it. So the first year, during the summer, we gave out 20,000 meals. And then we started continuing to work on adding libraries that would provide meals after school. So last year we had basically handed out over 100,000 meals to young people through after school and during lunch during the summer. While we are certainly not completing that $58 million meal gap, our 100,000 meals have a significant piece of that, and the other agencies step in. We are all going to work together to help, to solve this issue that Cleveland is facing. And in Cleveland, the gap by the time it's finished has come down. So because of the food bank working with a lot of outside agencies to provide lunches and meals in different places, the gap went from 9 million they ended up with a gap of 4 million. And they can actually see maybe in the end being able to completely fill all of the meal gap during the year's time. All right? So here's an example of us taking and looking at a need in the community and being a catalyst by precipitating them being able to bring in meals. We didn't cook the meal. We didn't do any of those type things. We facilitated an opportunity for young people to come into our library and get meals after school and during the summer. So what we're going to do now is start to examine other things that you guys see as opportunities for you to be a catalyst in the community and for us to have a discussion around it. So I don't think we need to have papers unless you wanted to hold on to them. But at your table, start thinking about what are the needs in your community, because every community is different. And you can put it on a micro level. You don't have to be thinking about it. If you're thinking about Las Vegas, you don't have to be thinking about Las Vegas in general. You can talk about the specific community that you serve. What are the needs in that community that are not being met? And how do you believe your library or your organization can serve as a catalyst to help solve that need? And then we'll talk about what do you think are the things that are working against you being able to do that. So let's take about 10 minutes to have those conversations within your group. All right, we're going to start here. Group number 1. We're going to start getting group number 1. And so, they're going to write them down, because what we're hoping to do is get a number of options, and then examine one option that we can work through, that we can see if we could find a solution for how we would work through it. Now, I overheard you guys, and one of the things we were talking about, young people who come in after school and they get on the computer. I'm sure maybe you guys have kids who are teenagers who come in after school and they just want to sit on and look at WWE videos and various games, whatever, and they're not being productive with their time. Talk to me afterwards. I think I have a productive answer for that. We're doing something in Cleveland that I think would be an answer. But we'll move on from that one. So let's hear what you guys have for ideas that if you could be a catalyst for change in the communities that you serve, what are some of the things you'd like to try to do?
I had talked about reaching the Hispanic community. I'm from Incline Village Branch, so we have a very affluent community
Well, hold on. You guys have anything else from the table?
Well, we never really discussed anything. I was on a couple things from my.
Okay. Okay.
Our patrons have been asking for school readiness programs. For their kids when they're going into kindergarten. And, teen job skills, so that they can, the first job that they get, is a job that they're gonna do. Teen job?
Teen job.
Yeah. So in the last year, the ski has lost their family resource center, they lost their grant, the grant ended and wasn't renewed. And we also lost, we were, at the closest 85 miles of Las Vegas, and, Social Security used to come out twice a month, they would make appointments with the elderly, we have a large senior population, and, because of budget cuts, they quit doing that. So anytime, obviously, everything is online, accessible to them online, but a lot of these people are in their 70s, 75, 80, and they have no clue how to use a computer. So one of the things that we're having difficulty with recently is getting seniors on computers, teaching them the basic skills so that they can access their Social Security. Should hear them cut. You wouldn't think they would be so upset, but so frustrated because they can't even make the mouse click on, they don't understand. But the Family Resource Center also lost, like, when children, the space when court ordered visitation, they lost that space, and there is no other space that will allow them. So they just started using the library. They just come in, all the social workers and the parents and the children, and just one family can be 8 or 10 people. It takes a lot of space, and they don't, they observe, they write things down. So we're working on, although we haven't been through the library district yet, we would love to give them a scheduled time and space in our library, and they haven't approved it. So right now, they just come in like regular patrons, and they take up a large portion of our children's, small children's space when they're heavier patrons.
So senior programming is good,
Yes.
right? Primarily technology.
Yes.
Senior technology program. I think that's huge because in Cleveland, what the doctors are doing, they're giving the seniors like the blood pressure cups.
Oh, yeah.
And so they go home and they're doing that, and then they're supposed to input all of their information. So they're actually doing their testing at home. And they have to input their information, and the doctor gets it back to them. But they're struggling because they can't use the technology. Number 2.
So one of the problems that we identified are unidentified members of the public, especially in the transition, that probably could use access to social services. And so trying to find a way to connect the social services agencies with these potential clients that might be necessary.
You guys are kind of social services and mental health. That's huge.
Increasing awareness.
Oh, yeah. Other thoughts from the table? Yeah, that would be Number 3.
Kind of to build on what Elizabeth was talking about, beyond school readiness, early intervention, like somehow being able to fill that niche that school district's not able to do when it comes to like language acquisition, speech issues, learning disabilities, because it's not being identified in the students here, so that, like I'm from Minnesota, there, if you're 3 and you have a speech issue, they try to work with you so that by the time you get to kindergarten, you're more streamlined in. Like one of the schools I visited, 75% of the students don't speak English when they start. So it's like somehow the library worked with early intervention to help streamline this.
Early ed school librarian. I'm the only school librarian here. You weren't here yesterday, but we talked a lot about the lack of partnership between the school district and the library district, and even how it seems that sometimes it gets maybe clogged up here with the people who go to work hour. We talked about our school district did online registration. You can't go into the school and hand in the paperwork anymore. It has to be done online. Well, they didn't advertise, and they were saying, well, they could help parents over the summer. And I know the registrar in my school was a deal with these parents. Once they came in August and their kids had no place to go, would have gladly gone to Aliante Library, which is right next to us, and helped people 2 or 3 nights over the summer, just because in the long run. So maybe up here they said, oh, we can't pay them, we can't ask them to come in. But if you ask the people who are going to be doing the bookwork, they're more than willing. So that was another thing that we trying to share how we get
That's huge. I don't know how many libraries have talked around the country in the U.S. and they have poor relationships with their school district. And it's one of those things you talk to the business community, they cannot understand what's wrong with that. They're like, how can you guys not get along and not be working together?
However, the business community doesn't support our schools or our libraries either, so they do come.
So I don't disagree with you there.
That's not being a catalyst.
Just pointing out the audience, but one to work through. I'll put my money over.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from the table?
I also did partnerships with other organizations. Like I have a colleague who district partners with the hospital. So every June mother will their taxes to the library, and we have to like make a little lengthy, like a small advertisement, like, hey, come to the library, we can help you out, and so it's right there.
Number 4.
We actually spent a lot of time talking about Squirrel Bridges, which university is quite rural, and Amy here as well. The part of her issue is that she has one main branch kind of right in the middle of the city, and then there's one branch on the way on the other side, and there's a whole community right in the middle that's all rural, that it's very long for them to be able to get to the branch, and they don't have access. And she said one of the things they did is they started putting little book drops, and at least when people came in, they didn't have to go so far to drop the books off. So I brought up the idea of maybe perhaps creating a day where they had longer hours, like just one day a week, where the hours were longer for those people that have extra time to drive into town and actually spend at the library. Because if you spend, an hour driving, then you only get an hour in there on side. Maybe once, maybe 2 or 3. So you have a day doing that. Perhaps working in part with somebody for like a voluntary carpool as well. Hey, we got a van, we can take 8 people to the library today. Who wants to go? From these rural areas. And Carrie, she's talking about with the university, she's got a rural area where the university's going online, but these people don't have internet, so they can't, they're blocked from going to school because they can't access it. So we were talking about looking into the library, perhaps checking out like T-Mobile hotspots. So people can check it out, take it home, have a hotspot, and be able to access the internet while they can do their schoolwork. And/or I was also talking about, I know Cox, it's slow rolling, but Cox Communications is working on free Wi-Fi statewide as well, like staying on top of that, learning when those hotspots come in, and actually letting your students know, hey, these spots are available. And John, I don't know if you want to talk about that. That's pretty cool.
City libraries have high workforce development efficiency. While we've had always trying to track Tesla, some people in Nevada and other manufacturers come. One of the concerns was that Nevada wouldn't have the workforce to support these new businesses coming to town. So they partnered with Western Nevada College and the manufacturing school to offer a manufacturing technician credential at their library. Watch us keep that on that. So that's an interesting way to grab
I thought a really good point he brought up, though, was mentioning like this idea of workforces and how John said, he's like, well, I'm not really an educator, I don't really know anything about this, so how can, at my branch, can I really help people through these things? And I forgot who brought up the statement, but said, well, part of our ability is to be a facilitator. I don't know how to do it, but let me see if I can find somebody who does and bring them in to help it. So that's part of what we do at the library, is facilitate the ability for people to learn.
Two good ideas, kind of rural campus disconnect, because we're starting to talk, and we like to start talking to libraries around having a campus, when they have multiple branches, where something like university might, how you work with those types of facilities. And invested in workforce development institute. Number 5. Don't everybody say something at the same time.
What I talking about. I just thinking more of not so much what a concept of a library, but maybe some where we're lacking in our library that we need. And that is young people might not ID 18, early 20s. There's not a lot of options. Things. You know, it's kind of a phenomenal positions, and there's activities and programs, things going on, some whole things, get together, learning opportunities for those people, also online, but lots of times people ask, and I say this age category, what is there to do?
No, not it.
You know, if you don't know four-wheelers, you know, and you're, I mean, honestly, I'm at a loss. If you're not involved in a sport activity and you're not an outdoor person writing something, there's not that much to do. Maybe that's something that we brainstorm some ideas in our library for that age group that might be of an interest. You know, I mean, there's the obvious jobs, like, you know, some people have jobs and some don't, but as far as beyond that,
It's, we were talking about earlier, a team, working group, team group, any further on the book. You guys have one more at the table? Lisa? Horace?
Yeah, we talked with some other people who mentioned about the Spanish community, a lot of the immigrated Spanish community especially, and how to reach that community. Chances are they're not going to come into your library. You're going to have to work for the schools, you're going to have to work for community centers, and you know, quite frankly, we realize there are some unsavory people in the communities that really don't want them to come into the library anymore because they use them as information, they can prey on them, they can, you know, the more we educate the community, the less likely they are to become victims to people in the community who have that power. So, you know, and looking for ways that we can reach that community, but also one thing we discussed was, as a library district, we cover different areas, different demographics, different community areas. A lot of times, it's like in a classroom setting where you have a couple kids who are acting up in the classroom and they get all the attention, and other kids who are kind of mild-mannered are being left out. They may need the help just as much as the kids who are causing. So we tend to, in our library district, I think, really concentrate on lower-income demographics, the really needy people. But there's a lot of families who may live in a nicer area. You may see that they make more money on paper. They look like they're in a much better situation. They may have some mom and dad working 2-3 jobs, and the kids are latchkey kids at home with nothing to do, and they need help just as much. So as we concentrate, as you know, your district covering a wide variety of area, and you know, Las Vegas, you know, you have a huge demographic switch from one branch to the next. Is to really, when you have limited resources, to really decide how you can do that so you're serving all of your residents, not just for a specific group.
So, you guys got that? Yeah.
So programming for high and low socioeconomic.
Exactly. So you're not leaving people out.
Number 6, you guys got.
I was thinking about how I like to say about the mobile showers. I'm over on the east side of Mount Place in the library, and we have to go to the population and it'd be really grateful to shower. I don't know how that would work, mobile showers, and then next thing that you schedule. Yeah, so then I know whatever class or
So I think that that's more of an answer, and actually you guys, that's kind of like a solution that comes along. You guys, that's a solution to an issue of whether we step on that family.
Well, one of the things that kind of goes with the workforce development is that we still have a community where people are switching jobs, they're still looking for jobs, and they're having a hard time to applying for jobs because we've got to have some knowledge that we need to reach people out and apply for those jobs. So if we're in the partnering, which we are doing, but they never have to do a resume in their mind for a long time. You know?
Yeah.
And now they're having to do it.
And on that application.
And a resume. Just flat out a resume because it has to do with the mind.
Good, we got that? Number 7.
We have to.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
I thought it.
That's increasingly becoming a larger and larger group. Even a few years ago, that was really going down. We get anything else in here? Okay, number 7.
When we talk about technology, the lack of literacy and public on how to use computers for, jobs, for the originating, the help cards, and the time in which the staff is going to do that. That ability is going to be really more training, devices and things like that, and hopefully assist with
Okay.
We talked about the fact that a lot of people know how to use a computer or a laptop, but they don't know how to use devices. And so maybe help with that. In our community, we also have a lot of applications. A lot of them are online.
Work over that. Anything else in this one? So, what I'm going to ask you quickly to do is pick up a marker, put it to the back, and one that you think we should talk about and try to figure out a solution. Put a check to it. You have 3 checks that you can put something on. And it was very, 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 very close. Mental health issues had 21 votes, and school district issues, school district partnership with the library had 22. So I think mental health issues is really a little bit more complicated, and I think the school partnerships are the one that we can actually come out of here something with. But what we want to do is try to talk through some of these things that maybe folks have done, and also look at it. So, but first, let's look at it. What would we like? What do we think we could accomplish if we had better relationships with our schools? So we're just no writing down. Let's just talk through these things out. Go ahead.
Not so much duplication of efforts. If we were communicating better, like I think about homework help and tutoring. Like need tutoring and they have homework help, and if like we coordinated, we could make it better and not people doing it sort of.
And to piggyback on that, and maybe you don't have the resources being spent on duplicate or similar items to support your patients and your students, and then so you can decide to maybe do tutoring, and we're now going to use the money for some other after-school program that supports the kids in both ways.
Thoughts? Yeah.
One of the things would be able to better tailor our collections, coordinate our collections to better support the curriculum in schools. They can only have so much. We don't know what to do.
A benefit of this could be more like traffic in the library.
Traffic in the library, that's very good.
Maybe you can also address digital literacy in the school population.
I completely agree.
I kind of think back to that with work with teachers directly. So if they see students who are struggling, they send them to help them. So
Yeah, I think also becoming more knowledgeable about what the current education system looks like as well on our part. Being aware of like what the educators are facing, being aware of what the students are facing, so that we can target possible weaknesses on the school part that we can help them later back up or improve.
Communication with teachers and knowing what materials and new materials are assigned, so that we might actually be looking at from the library when,
That's a big one. That's a big one. Carl?
Piggybacking on that, maybe guiding teachers to select materials that are more interesting and current, so that we're not saying they will only want class for that and we'll just be library content.
No,
That's a teacher right.
we're not integrating both the city library and nothing like that. I know, I
The
understand.
only library that has it, they have, they don't get rid of as much as we do. We have much of collection as the zero cost and one and stuff, so we have to be really brutal with our reading. So I believe really great books, if we just have the houses over and we're all trying to get back. Don't have a lot of it back, and they're like, on shelf, so you know, one classroom is kids trying to get that one book.
And if I can piggyback on what you're saying, we have at schools who they constantly send me their second and third graders to find autobiography. And I tried to communicate with the teacher that, do you really want autobiography? Do you understand that there are like tools for children? So that's Oh, yeah, reading levels. They come in and say, I want to focus on XYZ reading level.
The state of Nevada has a new website that registers lifestyles. If you want it, I'll put it up for you.
He's solving problems already. And
Our school district has quarterly meetings with all the school librarians, and we just invite ourselves to those meetings and just go. I mean, now they invite us, but we go to every single one to find out what's going on. And they just cut school librarians in our school district just very recently this school year. And so now when we go to the meetings, we find out, okay, what's going to suffer with these cuts? What can we do to make up for that?
we're starting to see that everywhere, but it's a very, very difficult place to be, because move more as a public library, you move into that space, the more folks feel easier about doing away with the school librarian, and that's not where we want to be.
Right.
Let's go. Yeah.
One frustration I have working with the adult desk is like the high schoolers who need all the sources, and a lot of times we have to refer to databases, and then we have copies of the one book that they want. And there is this misunderstanding about what a database is as opposed to a website. Teachers won't allow that, and it's wonderful for coordination and training between librarians and high school teachers as to resources out there and what electronic sources. It's very frustrating because you can't feel the child needs. We don't have print of this anymore. We have it electronically with, all the graphic stuff. It's the same thing, but it can't be used because you're not understanding of what that is among the
That's a real shame at grade school level, because when they get college, databases are going to be expected to know what those are.
That's almost like daily basis.
Go again.
Well, so first of all, as a school librarian, I feel your pain as well, and I tell them every day. They don't get it. But one of the things, so I sat in the meetings that we only have once a year, and I've been school librarian for 16 years, and somebody has come out from the library district, and I don't know if this is on lack of whose part, but for me, this isn't the conversation that was had. It was a nice little folder to get a bookmark, and this is what we offer, instead of having library district personnel saying, this is what we need, we can't help your kids unless we understand what this is. You need to teach your kids about databases and stuff like that. So it definitely would behoove everybody for that conversation to be open. But also on the flip side, within the school district itself, there is not a consistent method of operations for school librarians. It's on paper, but what you get from one school to another varies greatly. And so that lack of consensus within the building, and like you said, the importance of school librarians, combined with teachers not really knowing or using knowledge they loved in third grade, or thinking because every kid has a phone that they have internet access, it needs to be a conversation that's open and really worked on for a while, so we just, I don't know, get rid of blame and say, here's all the issues, so now how are we all, because I think we're all saying the same thing and want the same outcome. We're just,
one of the things that I've heard a lot of and I've thought about for a while is that we've talked a lot about the misconception about what libraries are and what they do, and we're talking about it like it's only kids or the public or Hispanics or whatever who don't get it. The school districts do not always get it. And I think what we're looking for, whenever you have a partnership, there's always this quid pro quo aspect, right? And so what we need to think about is educating our school districts, not just the teachers, but the principals and the heads of the districts and all of that. We need to educate them, and you're doing a fabulous job, but we need to educate them about what we actually do offer and what we can bring to the table and what together we can potentially bring to the table. Because I think that's what we're looking at. They're so busy, they don't know what we can do, they don't know who we are, and that's where we need to go.
They don't even, I hate to say it's such a hard thing because they don't even value the librarian that they have within their own employment, within their organization. They tell you if you're short too many teachers, get rid of your librarian, put a clerk in, and now you can get a new math teacher so your math class is available. And then they say, but here's Common Core. If you can't teach Common Core, you have to help your school librarian.
I think that you also have to start with a champion. You have to have somebody, for us, it was a school board trustee who was a community member who got elected and got on the school board. That's how it started. It started with a very small group of committed citizens who changed our community. And so I think if you can develop a champion who does understand, they can help other people understand it.
Rebecca?
I don't want to, at the risk of sounding like we did it good, one of the things that we committed to, we are not as well resources. We took a position that was a youth services librarian in branch. We wrote a new job description called K-12 specialist. And that person does outreach to schools and coordinates things like the accelerated reader or one son of accelerated reader, that kind of but also systematically is outward facing to the school and the school administrators, selling what we do. Shows someone, remember the strength finder that I talked about, we chose someone who honestly could skin a cat and sell it for me. All apologies to the cat. It's
remember the table is the cat. They're a little frightened by that.
I don't want to offend you. Honestly, she's really good at what she does, and we're trying to show our commitment to them, even though I'm as frustrated as an outsider with the fact that there are ladies who are librarians in California. Certainly not that one. But we're just pushing. And if we don't do it, there's nobody else to go.
I'll take your comment, and I want to add something because I want to make sure everyone let us not get too started to try to coalesce around some answers.
talked about our database that we have, and we've had some really good success with that. It would be great if you could do it to a teacher development day or something like that, go out and show the teachers what we have and what they can.
So I want to talk a little bit about what happened in Cleveland. Historically, we've had the same issues, relationship with the school district. School districts simply feels like there's nothing that a library can offer. And the library, they will come to us when they need something from us, and then when we are asking things to them, they just don't see the relationship of what we can do to help and answer their issues. We have a great superintendent at Cleveland. Young guy, really energetic, very open to things. Came in, had a million things on his plate. Talk to him, we have ideas that we're moving forward. That's to a point where the state of Ohio did something called the third grade literacy. If a student does not pass the third grade exam at a grade level of reading, they will be held back.
Rebecca has also done
The bad tell that in the Cleveland schools, when they first took the test at the beginning of the year, just to see where they were, only 54% of the kids passed. They're going to have nearly half of their kids be held back. And so every organization in the city mobilized, including the library. And they started to realize the importance of libraries in helping young people read. Now, one of the things we recognize is we generally don't work to help kids read. We facilitate reading. And so we had to change up how we saw ourselves at the library, becoming much more of providing tutoring for young kids and doing the work around that, because that's generally what libraries haven't done. But that's where the attitude around what libraries can mean to them and change the numbers. By the end of the school year, the number had gone up to 80%, and 80% of the kids. Still 20% was way too many kids, not to have, but to have anywhere where they were. And it was a very effective mobilization. And now the library director is talking to me and saying, let's talk about a joint position that we can share between the library and the school district. And this person will work back and forth between the organization. So I think what we, from a larger picture, we have to first identify how does that superintendent see the school district? Because ultimately, if they see the school district as having value, they will hail the folks down the line to make things happen with the library. If they don't see value, they're not going to, nothing we do within the branch level is really going to be able to make a lot of difference. I mean, we'll make for that library and that school that we're working with, but not in the larger picture. So, I think, as you guys have started to talk about it, so I think there were some really good answers in this, but I want you guys to start examining this when we go back, because this is something that's really important to you. How do you create a connection on a big level, on a higher level? How do you get to your director so that your director can see that this is an issue that they need to try to find a way to get to school districts or superintendents? And in many cases, those folks don't talk. But in effective libraries, and I know this is one of the things, when Rebecca and I were talking about it, the library directors are reaching out and having relationships with them, and they see us in a very different light. And this is one of the changes that has been made along the line. Folks, if you're an effective library system, people see you differently. They see you as someone who can make things happen, and then they want to be a part of it. They don't see that, and they generally don't talk to you. Any other thoughts? Yes.
I would like to challenge the group. As you know, we have a December meeting and we have a June meeting. And then we come back in LA next year in Las Vegas. And I'd like to, pick someone out of the group that shines through these next two conversations as being, part of the co-presenter. Let's do this. Start to build those small partnerships. Whether it's just your local elementary school, your local high school, whatever connection that you can make, let's choose this as our project. Does anybody think that that would be valuable?
then we can tailor our discussion in December and June in the webinars to this topic. And we can talk about, so I tried this and it tanked, or I tried this and it was a really great success, I'm building a champion. Okay, so that's your homework for the next 3 months. And we'll start to talk about it in December, and then we'll again in June, and then at NLA. What do you think? Awesome.
Alright, so I'm going to finish out with 2 thoughts. First of all, before you have 2 reports, Learner at the Center of a Networked World and the Rise of the Challenge in Visiting Public Libraries. Unbelievable, very, very good report. I would say if you have an opportunity, certainly read it. Please don't pitch it, because one of the things is as you're going to do like a presentation or you're doing something for work, this is like just as easy as you can get to go and look through that and get some data and stuff that you want to put inside your report. And those folks, you can send them an email. They'll send you slides and anything you might need for that. Part of my program here was to talk about this. I was a part of this task force, Learning at the Center of a Networked World, and Rise into the Challenge over the device group on that. So one thing you can do to help me along with that, if you wouldn't mind, take pictures and tweet to the Aspen Institute. The fact that you guys have to take pictures with it, that would help me very much slowly, because I asked the folks to send them down here. So there you go, that's a good one. Great pictures being tweeted out to the Aspen Institute with their reports in your hand. That would be awesome. The Aspen Institute.
Can we Instagram or
It's
Facebook?
whatever you want to do. Whatever, just get out of social media and do it all. They will see it and they will say, wow, those folks, they're on it. As we know you guys are. So, and this is what I wanted to kind of bring that up, is because John Seeley Brown, library is a place to catalyze curiosity, and curiosity, serendipity, and imagination are things libraries can do well. John Seeley Brown is one of the foremost thinkers in education, and so he really believes the libraries are the future of education. In the Learners at the Center of a Networked World, this is the first time I've been a part of something where libraries are seen as the next future and where schools are going to ultimately end up, where a lot of learning are going to be done outside of school, not inside school. And libraries have an opportunity to be that place to do that. So I'm going to skip past those slides, but I want to bring just my last thing to say to you guys. My one tip, I have 3, but I'm going to ask you to eat that frog. Does everybody know about Eat That Frog? Judy does. Okay, so the idea of Eat That Frog is it's a quote from Mark Twain. Mark Twain said that if the worst thing you do in the morning is get up and take a live frog and eat it whole, you probably won't have anything worse to do all day. So the idea is, and this is something that has been of great benefit to me, and a lot of folks worry about how to balance that family work, get that family work balance. And so this is how it really works for me. I'm just doing many type of different things. And so the idea is you get up in the morning and you do the worst thing that you're going to have to do for the day. Letting somebody go, dealing with a very difficult patron, if it's something else, you put that on your calendar at the beginning of the day. You do it, and your day will be much better along the way. Then, as I'm driving home, I figure out what my frog is going to be that day. After that, I let work go. So that, many times you leave and you have all of these things, I got to deal with this, and you let it affect your personal life. Create your frog, let that be your next day, and then move on. And with that, I thank you guys very much.
Yeah, what are the 3 tips?